All right, to my guest, thank you so much for being on the show. How you doing? How you feeling?
I am doing really well. And thanks for
Good,
having
good.
me on the show.
Of course. I was just telling her, you all, before we started the episode, that I really enjoyed your book. I just really enjoyed your story. Very inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, before we dive into your personal journey, I want to talk about your background as a mystery writer. So you spent many years crafting intricate plots and solving fictional puzzles, but in many ways, you ended up uncovering the biggest mystery of your life. So did you feel as if your skills as a mystery writer helped you navigate the shocking discovery about your mother's racial identity?
Yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, actually, the initial discovery was a shock that I was not prepared for
Yeah.
at all. But as I started my own research and started putting pieces together, that's when more the mystery writer skills came into play.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny you asked that question because, as you know, I was on Genealogy Roadshow when that show used to be on PBS. And you have to fill out a form to be on. So
Mm-hmm.
I started out my form with saying, I'm a mystery author who has a mystery in her own family she can't solve with any certainty.
Mm-hmm.
And they love that. They thought, oh, okay.
Is this the biggest story that you uncovered as far as a mystery writer, your own?
Yes, short of anyone getting murdered.
Right.
No one got murdered when I was uncovering this.
Right. Now, did you know about racial passing and its significance in America before you knew about your mother's story?
I did. I don't know what year this was. Imitation of Life. Do you remember that movie? That was a big deal. I think it was, oh,
Was it in black and white?
I no, I think it was in color. The
Okay.
second one, the first one was. You're right.
Okay.
I'm thinking of the one I saw as a young person. And so that made me very aware of that,
Mm-hmm.
of passing. But I was being aware of it and then find out your mother is passing two different.
Yeah. I was so excited about your conversation, and I was speaking to my best friend about it, and she told me how her great grandmother passed and she learned about it. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, it's like, I feel like now racial passing is like starting to come to the forefront of a lot of conversation when it comes to race.
I think you're right. However, when my mother was passing, no, you never reveal that, family members never to reveal another family member is
Mm-hmm.
passing. That's sort of an unwritten rule
Right.
because it could be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was born in New Orleans in 1921, so we still had segregation and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of violence toward people of color. I miss lynchings, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So back then in my mother's era, you didn't talk about that.
Do
Um,
you do you think passing still happens in different forms today?
I do. I don't have any evidence of that, but I would guess it does.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I would think so.
So looking back, do you think your mother would have understood why you chose to share her story?
I'm not sure. There's a part of me that thinks, yes, she totally would want this
Mm-hmm.
because she always wanted me to speak up about injustice of any kind, and she would. She
Mm-hmm.
would say something. So I think in one hand, yes, she would have. But then when I did confront her in 1997 with all my evidence that she was
Mm-hmm.
passing, she swore me to secrecy.
Mm.
She, I had, it was after my father's death. So I had
Mm-hmm.
visited her, I asked her to visit me in Illinois. I grew up in Ohio. So
Mm-hmm.
when I told her, Mom, I have your birth certificate, because I did write to the state of Louisiana for my mother's birth certificate. I pretended I was my mother, and then
Right.
then I lost my birth certificate. And so, of course, they sent it to me. And on her birth certificate, in parentheses, are three letters, COL,
Mm-hmm.
which
For
I'm
colored.
assuming is colored, right?
Right.
So, just to be sure, because I'm a researcher, I sent another letter to the state of Louisiana and said, would you explain what COL means to the state? And they sent me a really long letter, and they said, in most instances, COL means a person of color, and many times a person of African descent.
Mm-hmm.
So I had my evidence. And when I said to my mom, I have the birth certificate, she got very angry. She said,
Mm.
I don't know what birth certificate you have, but mine says I'm white.
Mm.
So I took a beat and because I could see she was upset. And then I said, well, Mom, um, I've got your birth certificate. I have some other documentation I'd like to show you. And it does not say you're white. So she got very, very quiet.
Mm.
Like she kind of shrunk into herself. And then
Mm-hmm.
she looked at me and she said, you can never tell anyone until after I die, because how will I hold my head up with my friends?
Yeah.
That's how much fear and shame she was carrying. And then I said, I only had one sibling. My brother's recently died, but I said, can I tell?
Oh, wow. My
Yeah,
condolences.
very sad. I said, well, can I tell my brother? And she said, no, not even him.
Mm.
I did not feel good about keeping this secret. What I thought in my mind, though, was it's not my secret, it's hers.
Right.
So I'm going to honor what she wants. And she lived a long time. She lived to 92, so I kept her secret for 17 years.
That's a long time to keep a secret. 92
It
years.
is. And then the only people I told, of course, I felt I had to tell my husband and my two
Right.
children. And then I had a very good friend that I shared it with, but that was it. I didn't tell anybody.
Wow. God bless your mother. Because I've been reading a lot about like racial passing and stuff. And I think you wrote in your book, you was like, a lot of times people racial pass for just security and for a better life. And I can only imagine how painful that was for her to leave her community and just her family behind.
It was in some ways, but in other ways, I don't think as much for maybe someone who was very tight with their family. My mother came from a very chaotic family. She was not
Yeah.
raised by either parent. So she was sort of shuffled around to grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that might have made it easier for her.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because every time I tried to talk to her about it,
She'll
one,
shut it down.
oh God, yeah. You know what she
Yeah.
would say to me? I would bring
What?
her up and she'd go, so how are the kids? Like, okay, I know she's not going to tell me. So,
Right. Wow. And of course, her daughter discovered her truth.
yeah, absolutely. And not only did I discover it, I decided to write about it.
I know. And go on national TV.
Go on national TV. And as you would say, I outed my mother on national
Yeah.
TV, which, I struggle with that a little bit. But,
To
you
this
know,
day?
no, when I initially decided to go on television.
Okay.
Um, but then I justified it by thinking, well, she said, until I die. So she was deceased. She died in 2014, and that opportunity to be on PBS's Genealogy Roadshow came
Mm-hmm.
3 months after her death.
Mm.
That's how close it was. So I thought, okay, well, I kept the vow, I did it, so now it's time. And I also
Yeah.
thought this would help other people,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
No, I think so. I believe so too. So how did this affect you personally? Because I know in the book you mentioned how you had questions about your own identity.
Absolutely. It took me a long, long time to figure out my identity. And over since the book came out and I've been on
Mm-hmm.
the Today Show, initially I got a lot of email through my website, and most of it was positive. I'm not going to, but there were always people who questioned my motives, who thought I was after something that I wasn't. So, and then every time I did a presentation or I was on television or the radio, I could count on one question. Now that you know your heritage, how do you racially identify?
Right.
Everyone wanted to know that. So in the beginning, I thought the best way to identify because I hadn't suffered racism. Look at me,
Right.
as white as can be.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to get up there and claim something that I have no right to claim. So
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, I'm a white woman with Black heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And when I gave a talk in St. Louis, there was a Black woman in the audience who actually asked me that. And when I gave that answer, she said, well, there's no other answer you can give. I'm the president of the Black Caucus here in St. Louis. That's the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay. Then when I was on the Today Show, Megyn Kelly was the host. She asked me the same question. I gave the same answer. About 2 weeks later on Amazon, and this woman identifies herself as Black, just skewers me. In her comment, she hasn't read the book though. She
Mm-hmm.
told me on the show. She said, I'm telling all Black people not to read this book. You are not to read this book. This woman has not properly honored her Black heritage.
Why did she say that?
I wish I knew.
Mm.
I wish I knew. So, I started thinking about it. That was really the start of my journey to redefine my racial identity. Because
Mm-hmm.
and it also was like a revelation to me that no matter how I was going to identify, I was going to make somebody unhappy.
Right. Right.
And it had less to do with me and more to do with their agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me a while. I kept identifying as white with Black heritage. And then finally, I know it was some years later, I don't know how many years later, I kind of put the pieces together, rethought it. I was on this podcast called My American Melting Pot.
Mm-hmm.
And the host was a Black woman. She said to me, you understand that every time you talk, you're sort of an ambassador to white people, explaining to them Blackness.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that's not my intention. I'm a storyteller. I'm not.
Right.
But then it got me thinking, and I thought, okay, well, yeah, I'm out there. I'm saying these things. I'm trying to just tell my mother's story so everyone's aware of how racial designations in this country hold people back,
Yeah.
how they hold them back, and how, my family, my mother's family, in 1900s census, they're Black. And then in 1930 census, my grandfather, Azima Frederick, is white. It's
Right.
crazy. That's just
Yeah.
crazy. So at that point, I decided, well, think about what makes up your racial identity.
Mm-hmm.
So I have DNA, which
Mm-hmm.
7 and 9% African heritage. Then I have my ancestry, my ancestors, what they endured, because I trace the family, the Fredericks, all the way back to 1700s colonial Louisiana.
You did
And
a lot of research.
oh, I had help. I'm not going to take all the credit, but
You,
I
your husband, everybody.
everybody helped me. And I found Marta, an enslaved woman,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw what she endured, though she was emancipated by her enslaver, but she bore him 17, not 17,
Seven.
13 children
Oh,
total.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
During the first four, she was enslaved, and the rest, he freed her and the children. Um, so anyway, you just trace the history of the family through all these racial designations and how they were held back. And then I thought, I need to claim this.
Mm-hmm.
I need to claim this in a bigger way than what I was claiming it. So when the 2020 census came out, we all had opportunities to declare what we thought we were.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up saying I was mixed race.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I give a talk, that's what I say. And if people have a problem with it, I invite them to talk to me about it
Mm-hmm.
so that we can have a dialogue.
You need to start cursing people out. That's what you need to do. Because if I'm being honest with you, you are the first white presenting woman I ever had on my show, right? Because my platform is built, my
Wow.
platform is built for women of color. But when I read your story, I did my research on you. And I also, for some reason, I just had a really soft spot for your mom. And I feel like when I read your story, you were very honest about the history of race in America. And also you were very honest about how the experience you was navigating through and the feelings you was going through. So I think it was kind of annoying how people would question you because I don't feel like you had any ill intent at all. I think you were just discovering something that you never knew even existed. And it was a big discovery.
It was huge to me, though I have to tell you again, I'm under public scrutiny. So sometimes I would get emails and or indirect things posted. Well, why is it that white people, when they find they have Black ancestries, are so surprised? What's the big deal?
Right.
But that's not why I did that.
But
Why I
that's
did
not
that,
your story.
that has
Right.
nothing to do with that. I wanted to show what my mother suffered, what my family suffered, what racism in America looks like from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But only, of course, only in Louisiana, because that's where my family lived. So, but that's a good example. Um,
Right.
and, I have a Civil War hero, Leon Frederick, who
Mm-hmm.
was a person of color, and he was part of the first colored troops, Native
Yeah.
Guards in Louisiana. He was with the Union. I was so proud of him. I wanted that out there. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
people to start doing kind of a mind shift
Mm-hmm.
about things, but I would love to curse people out. However, what I find is then we're in an argument. It's like, seriously, I really would.
Yeah, because I'm like, don't be questioning what I am. Like, my mother's black. Like, I'm multiracial. What do you think I am?
Yeah. Well, because of the way I look, I think that's
Right.
part of the problem.
Right.
People go, "Mm." Even recently, I had someone, I don't know how they got to me on Facebook. It was, I don't know, I think it was a woman, and she said, she was explaining to me that I should not be ashamed of my white heritage. Ashamed of my white. It's like, because I was saying I was mixed, that meant I was ashamed of being white. No,
Right.
that's not it.
Right.
I don't know. I think I unfriended her. I
Yeah.
don't know
So
what
how
I did.
so how do you think the one drop rule continues to shape conversations around race and identity today?
Well, we supposedly we don't use
Mm-hmm.
that anymore in
Right.
the South to define race,
Mm-hmm.
right? When my mother was growing up, yes, the one drop rule, if you had one drop of African blood, you were considered Black. So that does not that is not a legal thing anymore. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know how much it affects us today. I still
Mm-hmm.
think we're making decisions very much on appearance.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
we are looking at people and still doing that.
Yeah.
And then having a set of stereotypes in our brain based on people's appearances.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So looking back, were there moments in your childhood where you now realize your mother was protecting her secret?
Yes. I yes, and that did not come to me until I wrote White Like Her.
Mm-hmm.
Started putting the pieces together, and I had this very vivid memory. As I was a young girl, my mother, I sat on her bed in her bedroom, and she started telling me tales of New Orleans. And the one
Mm-hmm.
that really stuck out in my mind, she told a tale. It was a true story, not a tale, of witnessing a Black woman coming down the banquette, the sidewalk in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
And she was burdened with all these groceries. She was an older woman, and a white man is approaching her, and she's struggling. And because she didn't get off the sidewalk for him, he pushed her off
Mm.
the sidewalk, and all her groceries, she fell, and my mother said to me, "You never treat people that way. That's the wrong way to treat people." She was giving me a secret message that took me a long time to decode,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
So
feel like
that
she
was,
was leaving you little breadcrumbs here and
oh,
there.
absolutely. And of course, she
Yeah.
had all these quirks that I just thought she was just, I had a quirky mom.
Mm-hmm.
Don't we all think our moms are a little off anyway?
Right.
I mean, I'm sure my daughter thinks I'm off. I know she does. Anyway, I just thought, well, mom would never go out in the sun without a hat. She liked to have
Yeah.
gloves on. She would never, she never sunbathe, that's for sure. And then she had this other weird habit. She would wear makeup, a light foundation on her face before she went to
Mm.
bed at night. And I didn't think any of it when I was really young, but when I got to be a teenager, I thought, why is she wearing I don't wear.
Makeup.
Yeah. And so I question her, and then she has this weird explanation about You never know when you're going to get sick in the middle of the night. Then the ambulance comes for you, and you want to look your best because you'll get better treatment at the hospital. So I thought, I don't know about that. But that's what she said.
Mm. Yeah, I was when you was talking about her doing the makeup and even the hat, and even when I think she waited a certain amount of time to give birth to your brother because she had fears of maybe the child coming out darker.
Well, I don't know. I mean, when I asked her why there
Mm-hmm.
was a 5 year gap, my mom was very religious, so I have to kind of accept this. She said, well,
Mm.
that's what God intended.
Mm.
Very religious. But I also think she must have been thinking that,
Yeah, I would have been thinking that.
because that's her background. And when I spoke with her first cousin, who was of her generation, the only one surviving, her name was, we call her cousin.
Eula,
You got it.
come
And
on now.
she explained that to me. She says, oh, yeah, we always waited to see the complexion of the baby.
Mm.
So I'm sure that was in my mom's mind. My mom had sort of an olive complexion. She always claims that people thought she was Italian,
Mm.
that kind of thing. So that was always on her mind.
Right. So in today's climate, how do you think your mother's life would have been different if she openly identifies Black?
Well, I would hope it would be a lot better, um,
Mm-hmm.
because there are more opportunities. Uh,
Right.
I'm not going to say we're there yet. We're not
Mm-hmm.
there yet racially in this country for sure. But
Right.
we've made some strides forward. And I think she might, if she had been of my generation, she might have been able to embrace it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. And do you believe she carried like guilt?
Yes, I do. I think she did.
Mm-hmm.
There were only certain family members that were allowed to visit us. I didn't know this at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That, as I refer to in the book, in quotes, passable people who could pass for white, so my father wouldn't know. And
Mm-hmm.
after the book came out, Uncle Homer, who was my mother's full brother, his daughter, I never met him. His daughter Phoebe actually called me to talk to me, and Uncle Homer married a woman of color, so the children were.
Mm-hmm.
So Phoebe said, "Oh, when your mother and father and brother came to visit us in New Orleans, I was already married. I could
Right.
I could not be at the house." And I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "Well, I couldn't be at Grandma Camille's house because I was too dark."
Mm.
She told me not to come.
Mm.
I felt terrible, and she seemed to like accept it, like, well, that's the way it was, and you
Yeah.
we didn't want your father to know.
Mm. You think your dad knew though, or had an idea?
I asked cousin Eula that, and she said he didn't know. I don't know. I'll never know.
Because I feel like when you was describing the argument they had, and he was like, "When before I met you, you didn't have any shoes."
Yeah.
In a way, he would talk about Black people, and I feel like your mom was like, she was trying to like, not make it obvious, but like you can't treat people like that. I don't know. I feel like maybe had an idea, or maybe he just felt like something was off.
He might have thought something was off, but then, they met during the war. So he was in Mississippi. He went to New Orleans on R&R. That's
Mm-hmm.
where they met. So he was probably familiar with how people in New Orleans look, Creoles and all of that. I'm sure my mother's, I can't prove this, but I'm sure somehow she got her hands on a white birth certificate. She had to.
Yeah.
I mean, how else could she have gotten married in Ohio without a birth certificate?
Right.
So somehow she maneuvered this. And, my mom was a very beautiful woman. And I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
my father thought, holy cow, I'm so lucky.
Right.
I'm not going to question too much right now.
Right. No, she was really pretty.
Yeah, she was really gorgeous.
Yeah. So you decide to share your story on national TV. So after sharing your family story, how did the reactions of your friends and your families respond to it? Because your father was also he was a racist.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. And I'm not making excuses, though it's going to
Right. I
sound
mean, it's
like
your
I am.
daddy, so I get
Yeah,
it.
he's my dad. And
Right.
he grew up, at a certain time. He's born 1918. He grew up in a very ethnic neighborhood.
Hmm.
There's a lot of immigrants. So it is not right, but there was a lot of bigotry
Right.
and racism. So he was continuing that, though I had never, ever, ever heard him say the N-word.
Right.
So I don't know and this is going to sound so patronizing, so forgive me, but one
Hmm.
of his best friends at work was a black man, Argosy, that
Right. And he
they were,
loves him.
they were friends.
Hmm.
Um, so how do you get that in your brain? How do you know what I mean, figure that out? So yeah, I think he was a bigot. He was a racist, sure. I'm not going to say he wasn't.
Yeah. How did his family feel about you sharing the story? Like, was
Well,
somebody
by
like
the
I
time
always
I
knew?
shared it, his generation were already dead.
Right.
So I'm dealing with my cousins, and I went back home after the book came out. I was invited to do a talk at the library, and some of my cousins came. They were,
Mm.
they were great. They said, "We had no idea, but this is awesome." So I
You
have
know, the new
gotten,
generation is different than the old
yeah, they're
generation.
different. I had no backlash from any of my family or my friends. I had one friend say to me, I'm kind of upset with you. You kept that secret from me, and I'm your friend, and you never told me. So everyone was good about it. I had no problems with anybody.
Yeah. Were you concerned about how the Black community or the white community would perceive your mother's decision to
Yeah.
pass?
Yeah. I did a talk at a bookstore in Hyde Park in Illinois, Chicago area.
Chicago. Hmm.
Yeah. And it was a mixed audience. And there was a point where, and I was in conversation with a professor from UIC where I did my graduate work, and she's a Black woman. And so there's a point where suddenly, and I don't know why this happened, the audience shifted and started criticizing my mother. I don't see why she thought she had to leave. That was
Hmm.
her community. She should have stayed in her community and gotten support. I was sort of taken aback. So I didn't say anything right away. And then the professor came in and said, "Look, guys, you're blaming the victim here.
Right.
Let's not do that." So she kind of shut it down. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that. Yeah, I've received that. I've seen that.
Do you have to like, do you travel with somebody or like, do you have a routine? Because I can only imagine what you have to do to get your mind ready for these conversations because you don't know how it can go.
I never know. Well,
Right.
I've had many years of teaching on a university level. So
Hmm.
anytime you walk into a class, from day to day, it's like, I never know. So um, yeah, I don't always travel with someone. Sometimes I go alone. But usually, if it's a library that's brought me in, they'll have someone pick me up and take me there and back. Though I
Right.
have a very strange experience. You're probably thinking of that from the book. Um,
Hmm.
Early on, this is actually before the book came out, but after I was on the roadshow, I gave a talk at a genealogy society, which is about an hour from my house. And the audience was all white, except for
Hmm.
this one woman who was of Asian descent. So in the middle of my talk, and there was obviously something wrong with her, because I was getting toward the end, I was about done, and she gets up and she said, and comes up to where I'm standing in
Oh,
front of
this
her.
one who started singing. Right.
She starts singing. And I could see the person who's hosting going, "Oh no." Like, oh, we got it. So yeah, I had to think on my feet. I didn't know what song she was singing. I just kind of let her sing. And then applauded and said, "Oh, that's great. Now I'd like to, is it okay if I finish?" And
Hmm.
she did. She went and sat down. But then as I'm leaving, it's a really dark parking lot, and I'm leaving a little bit before everyone else. She follows me
Mm.
to the parking lot, and I'm pulling my little suitcase with all my books. It's like I'm a little hobbled, and I'm trying to get to my car, and she just keeps talking, blah, blah, blah. And she's saying these kind of weird things, and I'm not sure what to do. So again, I had to think quickly, and I said, I came in this parking lot, but I'm not sure how to get out of it. Can you show me how? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So that got her brain out of whatever she was thinking. And she gave me directions. And then I got in my car, and I was so shook up, I actually went the wrong way.
Yeah, because like, girl, what are you doing?
Yeah, I know. It's like, no, I knew that something was off there, and you want to be very nice and kind and get her mind off something else.
Yeah. Something was clearly wrong with her though.
Yeah, no, it had nothing to do with me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm curious. What do you think about white women who get the braids, they want to be black, they tan their skin, they say they black, they act like black people? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I can't
Well,
think of the lady's name, but remember that
oh,
woman
I
who,
know. Yeah,
yeah,
Rachel Bilzane.
my girl Rachel.
Yeah, yeah. I have her in the second book, What They Never Told Us,
Mm-hmm.
because I tell a story in there, of a woman, Bird. Her last name is Vera Bird. Um,
Oh, Vera Bird. Yes, I know who
you
that
know of
is.
her, I bet.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and she,
Older lady.
older lady, Berta Bird,
Mm-hmm.
and Berta, that's her name. Anyway, the only reason she came out with her story was because of Rachel Dolezal. She was furious with this woman
Mm-hmm.
for doing that.
Yeah, Rachel was trying it though.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Come on
I
now.
just, to me, it's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm all for people embracing things, but not what she did. That's co-opting someone else's heritage, their identity. It's co-opting something you have no right to.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to talk about race in America and what's happened, you don't do it that way.
Right.
You don't. There are other ways you can do it. You can do it the way I'm doing it.
Right.
You don't have to do that. Um, yeah, no, I'm not a fan. Okay, let's just
Yeah.
put it that way. I'm not a fan of that. And when people accuse me, oh, the only reason you are telling your stories, you want reparations. Hell no.
Right.
No. Yeah, good
Right.
luck with that. No.
Right. Cause
It's like,
girl.
can you see me showing up for reparations? I don't think that's going to work. Anyway,
Right.
not going to happen. Ah, and that would be wrong, even though I have ancestors who
Yeah,
were entitled, who were in,
that's a fact.
but no, that's not what I do. So yeah, no, I'm not in favor of that.
What was the most surprising thing you discovered while researching your family history beyond your mother's secret?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
I got to think for a minute. Well, it was a surprise learning about Marta.
Mm-hmm.
My goal when I sat down, I had several goals. When I sat down to write White Like Her, because in the beginning, some people were telling me, oh, you should do a fiction book because you're a fiction writer. And then others were saying, no, do nonfiction. And then I decided nonfiction was better. So once I got back to Marta, Marta, by the way, is in other books, other
Mm-hmm.
research books, which I was shocked
Mm.
because not only was she enslaved, okay, so her mother was enslaved. I'm pretty sure her mother was brought from Africa. It was either her mother
Mm-hmm.
or him. It's hard because there are no records. So we have to
Right.
kind of make leaps and do it logically. So
Mm-hmm.
she was part of this estate in Louisiana, huge. These people were very wealthy. And she, of course, was inherited as part of the property. I hate to say
Right.
these things, but
It's
this,
true.
this
Right.
is what happened. I'm not going to sugarcoat this.
Right.
So, as I said, she had, and I would talk about this in the book because you cannot look at this as she had free will.
Mm-hmm.
She had no free will, and that sometimes in my research, and it's usually, I hate to say this, a male who's suggesting, well, these women had free will. No,
No. Mm-hmm.
no, there's no
She
free
was
will.
property.
Yeah. And when I read her papers, the reasons given for her freedom, I got furious. I got,
Yeah.
I was so angry. There's no free will. So after she had the fourth child, as I said, he freed her and the four children, went on to have a total of 13. This is what surprised me. When in his will, when he died, he divided his estate, which is very unusual. You're talking about 1700s. Half went to Marta and half
Mm-hmm.
went to the children. So they were free people of color who now are in the middle class because they have an estate. They have
Mm.
some wealth, which is
Mm.
very unusual,
Right.
very unusual. So I mean, you can look at it however you want to look at it, but that did surprise me.
Yeah. One thing that surprised me about your story when you was on your research, how you discovered that a lot of birth records had errors.
Yes,
And yeah, and it made me think about my birth certificate because I was trying to get my social security card like many years ago. And I was telling the lady that my birthday was February the 8th. And she was like, no, that's not your birthday. And I'm like, girl, how you gonna tell me? And come to find out, somebody put February 3rd for my birthday.
you're kidding.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
nobody
So when
caught
I
it? Nobody caught that it was wrong. Oh my goodness.
Right. So when I was reading your story, I was like, my goodness, like I can only imagine how many families are dealing with those errors that happened many years ago or
Yeah,
centuries ago.
centuries ago. You know, that really, I know we're talking about White Like Her, but that really comes into play in my latest book, What They Never
Mm-hmm.
Told Us, because these are all true stories of people who find out that either one or both of their parents aren't their parents, which means there's something wrong with their birth certificates.
Right.
And in one case, this one man, Brad Ewell, who he's just retired, he's a Texas cop.
Mm.
He takes a DNA test, him and his wife, for fun. Let's have fun.
Right. I wish I had some fun like that. Take a
Let's have
DNA
some fun.
test. Right.
So, and then they post the results on Amazon, not Amazon, on Ancestry. So anyway, 2 years later, he gets this strange message from a woman claiming to be his maternal aunt. He doesn't know who she is. Doesn't know
Mm.
who she is. So what the first thing he does, because he's a cop, he wants to help her so she can find the real nephew.
Right.
He pulls out his birth certificate and his wife's because they were born in Dallas the same year, 1970. Compares them, they couldn't have been more different. Where hers has a hospital where she was born, his has a
Mm-hmm.
dash. Where her father signed the birth certificate, his father's name is typed in. Long story short, he finds out he was adopted. At
Oh,
48, he finds he didn't know, and it gets even better. Not only is he adopted, but he goes in search of who his biological parents are.
right.
Mom's deceased, his dad is still alive, but he's serving a life sentence in Angola prison for murder.
What?
Yes, this is the most fantastic story you'll ever hear. Anyone wants to read it, by What They Never Told Us, because it's
Yes.
what he does afterwards, truly inspirational and amazing.
Wow. Could you imagine your daddy in jail for
No, 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 no. People who read the book who don't have these surprises they told me they started checking their birth certificates and counting back. It's like, wait a minute, do I have a secret?
You gonna wait till nobody had any intentions of telling him?
No, he actually called. The first thing he did when he figured it out was he called his adopted dad, and he said they were on the phone, and he like hemmed and hawed, and then finally he admitted it, and his dad said to him, well, we've been trying to find a way to tell you.
I bet.
Brad goes, yeah, you've been trying for
For
48
48 years.
to tell me.
Right.
He goes, that was the next lie.
Right, right. You
Like,
know, one thing I like about you, I feel like you are just so fun and you're very honest. So, what conversations about privilege, race, and systemic inequality did writing this book force you to tell yourself?
okay, I'm an educator, so
Right.
I'm very aware of, and I'm a historian, I'm very interested in history. So I've been aware of systemic racism through history, through time. Um, so what changed for me, and I hope I'm answering your question.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I didn't know, I did know, but when you find out, oh, it's not something in a history book, like slavery is not something in a history book. Slavery is something my ancestors had to deal with that was
Right.
inflicted on them. It changes everything
Yeah.
because well, that's my tribe.
Yeah.
You're messing with my people. So
Right.
so it becomes visceral, like physical for me. That's when I
Mm-hmm.
said to you when I saw what the enslaver wrote why he freed Marta, is like, you got a heck of a lot of nerve saying in regards to her affection toward you. What choice did she have?
Yeah.
Give me a break. You know,
Yeah.
I get really worked up about that. It just really bothers me.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like when people read your book, and I also feel like for yourself, like you found a new understanding of sacrifices and struggles that our generations had to endure.
Yes, absolutely.
Hmm.
Like I was saying, my mom had these quirky habits. And after I did my research, and she would not talk about passing. So I had to do a lot of research to understand what that was in terms of what you gave up, what were the pluses and minuses and what that did to a person. And I really had a deeper understanding for her. But I also
Hmm.
have a real sadness for,
Yeah,
for our relationship because I felt like, she saw I was keeping the secret.
yeah,
And I tried to talk to her about it. If she would only have talked to me,
yeah,
deeper our relationship would have been. I wasn't going to tell anybody. She had to trust me. But I think it was so ingrained in her that she was in such a state of denial that she just couldn't talk about it.
yeah.
It just wasn't. And the same goes for my dad. We talked about his racism. And, he served in World War II and he was in for the duration in the South Pacific. Until I got his records from the hospital when he had the medical issues,
Hmm.
I had no understanding what this man went through.
Yeah, you spoke about mental health.
Yes. And
Yeah.
he was never the same. And he actually told the psychiatrist, I am not the same man anymore, and I'll never be.
Mm.
So I had more empathy for him because it's hard growing up in an alcoholic household. It's really for children of alcoholics, it's a tough road.
Yeah.
So I had more understanding for what he went through.
While you was talking, I can just only imagine that desire to have that relationship with your mother the way that it possibly could have been. Because if she would have just been honest with you, I can only imagine other things that you would probably unlock.
And how I give myself consolation. Had she shared it all, I
Right.
probably wouldn't have been on the road show, and I probably would not have written
Yeah.
because I would have had my questions answered already.
Yeah.
Part of the journey of the book is answering those questions
Hmm.
and tracing the family and figuring out how this all began.
Yeah. If your mother could see the impact of y'all's story today, what do you think she would say?
I want to believe that she would be proud of me.
Mm.
Though she never ever said she was proud of me, I would like to think she would have been proud and she would have seen how much good has come out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the reasons why you wrote your second book, because so many people were emailing you,
Oh, yeah.
reaching out to you, telling you their family secrets.
Well, I was shocked because these were intimate things. And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
hey, guys, I'm a stranger. But I don't know. It must have touched people in a way that they felt they could trust me. And they were right. You can trust me.
Yeah.
So that's why the people in the book, they're 14 stories, but they trusted me. And when
Yeah.
I did all my interviews on Zoom. So they would say to me at the beginning, I feel like I kind of know you already, that I can tell you this. And so it cut through a lot of, them being
Hmm.
leery of me and because I already told my story, so they felt they could tell theirs.
Yeah. People feel seen.
Yeah, they did. And everything in there is what they told me.
So, what advice would you give to someone today who feels torn between two racial identities?
I think that's very tough.
Yeah.
And I keep bringing the book up, what they never told
Hmm.
us. One of the stories of Bruce Paul Scott finds out, he always suspected something was up, but he finds out later in life that his biological father was Black.
Mm.
He's much older. It affected him deeply in many ways, having people constantly use racial slurs around him because of his appearance. Though he grew up
Hmm.
in this very white Irish Catholic family
Mm.
who kept telling him it's a recessive gene, which was a lie.
Right.
So he said, to this day, I accept I'm biracial. That's fine. I'm good with that. But I'm still uncomfortable because I don't know what that actually means.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have the cultural background of, of his Black heritage. He just has white. So
Yeah. That's all
how
he
does
know.
that's how does he mesh those things together? So I think that's hard. And I wish I had an answer.
Yeah.
I can only look at examples of people I've talked to.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help?
Yeah, no, it does. I think it's very difficult when you look a certain way, but you identify another way, and you've been identifying this way for many, many years. Like I couldn't even imagine being black my entire life and then come to find out I'm white. Like that's a lot.
I think there was someone at the end of White Like Her who wrote me. I think her name was Paris. I don't know if you remember her. She wrote me
About
right
her
away.
grandmother?
No, she's the one who can pass, but she said the white community does not accept her, nor does the black.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
she's kind of like in this limbo place with her race. So she does,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was thinking about when I was reading your book when you first met your cousins and y'all had the family reunion. Like, how was that for you? Just seeing all these different
It was
types of
awesome.
people.
It was so, oh my God, they welcomed me with open arms.
Hmm.
It was a reunion to bring me back into the family, which, yeah, a family I didn't even know existed, some of them. And that they had a dinner in New Orleans, and I sat with Uncle Fred, Aunt Alma, Aunt Brenda, my husband and me. And my mom had only been dead a year. So
Hmm.
I kept staring at them. And I
Yeah.
finally apologized because I'm missing my mom. And they look so much like her. It was like she was there with
Oh,
us at the
wow.
table. You know, yeah, it was very emotional for me. It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know what? You look like you can cook. I can only imagine the food you've been getting from your cousins and them when I had the family reunion.
Oh, yeah. And my mom would cook New Orleans stuff.
Oh, so I know she could cook.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. We had, red beans and rice with shrimp on Fridays. I think I
Hmm.
say in the book, I make a joke. I'm the only girl from the Cleveland area who grew up on grits,
Right.
which I have my Polish husband cooks and too. Now we have that all the time.
I love me some grits.
You come over, we'll have some grits.
Yes, yes. I'm definitely gonna pull up on you, Miss, for sure.
All right.
And last but not least, looking back, how has uncovering your mother's secret changed the way you see yourself?
Well, yeah, I don't see myself anymore as just this white woman. I see
Yeah,
myself as a mixed race woman who has this rich, wonderful heritage that, I'm proud of and I want people to know about.
yeah,
That's why I'm talking about it. I'm not hiding under, some shelf or some closet. This is out there. It's been out there
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm super excited that we had this conversation. This was definitely a treat for sure.
for me too. And I'm
Yeah.
very honored that I'm the only white person
I
you've
know.
invited, but I really am not totally white.
Technically, you're not white. By the one drop rule, you're technically black.
Yeah, technically I am.
Yeah, so you get a pass on this one.
All right, I like that.
But I also feel like it was just very important to also just share your mother's story because I can just only imagine so many other women who have experienced this and just like yourself discovering their heritage. And it's a lot to take in.
It is a lot. It's a lot to take in, I think, when you make a discovery as an adult, because your
Yeah,
identity is so fixed, it's totally fixed. And then to find out, well, that's not your total identity. There's something else you don't know. So how do you integrate that and
exactly.
how do you put yourself back together?
Yeah. So God bless your mother, man, because what a story.
Thank
What a
you.
story. And to the listeners, if you have any questions or anything, or you want to just follow up with my amazing guest, please make sure to email me at hello@thephdpodcast.com. And I'm just curious, what's next for you?
Well, I'm doing a lot of promo for What They Never Told Us, and I'm not sure what I'm going to write next. There's several projects in mind. Can I ask you, do we have time for me to read a little excerpt?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm excited to read this from
Mm-hmm.
What They Never Told Us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true stories of family secrets and hidden identities. And it really does, in some ways, play into my mother's story of finding out you're something or someone different than you thought you were. And I'll do a real quick setup. This is from the last chapter, which is titled Strangers Keep Telling Me Their Secrets, which they keep,
Mm-hmm.
by the way. And This is an incident that happened at a conference I was at called Untangling Our Roots. And
Hmm.
it's the first day of the conference. And this conference is for adoptees, donor conceived people, and non-parental event people. So people who have different parents than they thought they had. So
Mm.
I'm sitting at my author table and I'm been signing books and I'm about ready to leave. So
Right.
suddenly I'm packing up. A woman is standing in front of my table, maybe in her mid-30s, though I'm a terrible judge of age. Brown hair, casually dressed. There's an edge to her.
Mm.
Lanyard is twisted, so I can't see her name or what state she's from. You're the reason I came, she says emphatically. I wasn't going to come, but I saw your name. I drove here from central Illinois. From the intensity of her gaze, the way she leans in, her hand
Mm.
resting on one of my books, I sense she's desperately wants to tell me something. I'm
Hmm.
both pleased but wary. My mother's story sometimes elicits unexpected emotional reactions from people. The woman's gaze drifts away toward the DNA Angels booth as she gathers her thoughts. I wait. Then she looks at me and begins to tell me her story. 2 weeks ago, I got my DNA results. Shocker.
Mm.
My dad's not my dad.
Mm.
I asked my mom about it. At first, she wouldn't tell me. Then she did. It happened while she was separated from my dad. She had an affair with this guy she knew. She thought
Mm.
she couldn't get pregnant. I guess she was wrong.
Right.
I'm just glad my dad's no longer here. Do you know who your birth father is? I asked. After almost 2 years of interviewing people who've had these parental discoveries, the question comes easily. She scoffs. It's a small town. I know who he is. As soon as
Mm.
I found out, I marched over to his house, knocked on his door, and told him I was his daughter.
Mm.
He told me to leave and not come back. End of story.
Wow.
Mouth is tight with anger and hurt. I'm sorry, I say. Of all the people's stories of parental discoveries I've listened to, none of them were so recent and so raw. Look, I'm a businesswoman. I run my own travel agency. People work for me. I can handle this. She pauses. I'm not sure if I'm going to stay. I just want to meet you. You might want to stick around and check out some of the panels, I offer, believing that the panels might help her.
Right.
I don't know. Thanks anyway. It's the second day of the summit, late in the afternoon. There's a line of people waiting to buy my book, probably because they attended my author panel. The line starts to dwindle. I look up after signing a copy of my book and see the woman from yesterday. She waits until everyone leaves. I thought I could handle this, but I can't.
Mm.
She starts to cry. I hold her hand while she cries. There's nothing else I can do except to say, it's good you stayed.
Man.
From my own discovery experience and from listening to others with similar experiences, I know the difficult journey that lies ahead for her as she begins putting the pieces of her identity back together. As I hand her my card, I tell her to email me via my website if she wants to talk. I never hear from her again.
Mm.
When I think about the stories in this book and the bravery of the people sharing them, I think about what the novelist Sigrid Nunez said at the end of her novel, The Friend. What we miss, what we lost, and what we mourn, isn't this what makes us who, deep down, we truly are? From these splintered pieces of who we once thought we were, we heal and forge our new selves.
Come on, Miss. Push that pen. That's what I'm talking about. You know what? One more question. And the reason why I'm asking you this question is because, I talk to a lot of different people from different walks of life. And, I feel like people resonate with my platform because, a lot of the stories that I do cover, we don't really talk about within the Black community, especially when it comes to sexual abuse. But for me, I don't always want to highlight the negativity of what goes on within Black womanhood, right? But also,
Yeah,
I understand the importance of having these stories on the show. So for you, all these people from the woodworks are sharing their family secrets and telling you all these things. Like, is it ever too much for you?
yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, this last book about did it for me emotionally. The way I work is once the Zoom interview's over, I go over the interview and I take word for word what they said. So I'm re-experiencing some of the most
Right.
emotional things that have happened to these people. And with Brad Yule's story, for some reason, he started talking about lost opportunities. And when I was listening to his story, my brother was near death.
Mm,
So I'm trying to navigate his story and then dealing with my own emotional crisis of losing my only sibling. And very tragically, he died of a brain bleed, which caused a stroke, and he lingered for a while, and it was a terrible thing. There's a whole
mm,
chapter on my brother and lost opportunities
mm.
and how important it is not to let these opportunities go. So yeah, I had, after listening to Brad, I took a month off. I emotionally couldn't go back right away. It was too much. My brother died in December, and yeah, it was hard to go back.
Yeah. I need an autographed copy, however much it costs. I need you have a fan in me.
Oh, you're so great. Yeah,
Yeah.
give me your info and definitely you'll get one.
Yeah, because what a story, man. I'm so happy that we crossed paths. I'm really
Me
am.
too. Me too.
Yeah, this has been one of my favorite episodes from this season. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. And to the listeners, like I said, reach out to me if you want to know more about our guests. And until next time, everyone, later. You gonna say bye?
Bye.